Hey, welcome back. We're going to have a short video on the term movement. And if you don't remember the word movement, it is one of the five themes of geography that you probably went to bed at night thinking about, dreaming about, and wanting to read about when you were younger. Or if you haven't yet, you're going to love it someday. But movement's a big piece of what we're going to talk about when we talk about colonization and settling in the new world. And really, anytime we talk about people going from one place to another, exchanging ideas, whatever it is. So, we're going to talk about movement. And to get you started, just so you know, we're always going to have a color, yellow, because yellow is important for our vocab words. Red is a color we use for conflict and transition, growth, that type of thing is a color green. Those colors, always have those at hand. Anything extra you can have just because you like to have it, but those colors are your old standbys, okay? So we're going to start by doing something real simple. Just because we want to promote some spatial reasoning, make sure you guys balance out your page. We're going to take this paper, we're going to fold it in half. Now, the only thing that does is it helps us center what we're trying to do. And so we're going to go ahead and open that page up, and now it's centered. And you know what? Why don't we go a step further? We're going to fold that paper, hamburger style, and we're going to fold it one more time just like this. And that way we know exactly where the center of that paper is. And you see I've got a paper underneath here. I do that because I use a Sharpie and it bleeds through. So if you're not using a Sharpie, you ain't going to worry about it. Okay, let's start right in the middle. And we're going to start with our big word, the main word, which is the word movement. And I'm going to put movement in a kapow box. I call them kapow boxes because, like, kapow, I want it to pop off the page. Anybody who's seen the old Batman movies, that's what it is. If you see my videos before, I always talk about the kapow box. And I'm going to add a little color to this. I always do a kapow box in yellow. And the reason I use yellow is because I want yellow to be associated with vocab words. So when you look at your page, you know the most important words in that page, and they pop off you. Colors have meaning when we do doodle notes, and movement is one of the vocab words we want to pop off that page. And in case you don't know what movement is, and you don't have to have that fancy of an arrow, but movement is defined as this. It's the travel of people, goods, and ideas from one location to another. Okay, so let's talk about that for a second. I screwed up this word a little bit. Another. In fact, I'm going to help you out. Let's just start over. I hate when my paper doesn't look good, but you know what? Everybody makes mistakes, and it's a good opportunity to really hammer home on this definition. When we talk about people, we're talking about us. When you travel from one place to another, that is considered movement. And sometimes you travel short distances, sometimes they're long distances. Same thing with goods. You know, if you ever open up something and look at it, in fact, let's take a look at this. This is my stapler, and it says right there, made in China. Well, that came here from a whole different country. Made in China, we had to move that from one place to the other to get here to the United States. And ideas. Trust me, a lot of ideas that we have, even something as simple as a light bulb, had to start in one place and then idea traveled somewhere else. And now those ideas are being used all around the world. Blue jeans, light bulbs, automobiles, pretty much anything you look around had to start from one place, and eventually it grows and becomes part of other places too. So that's what movement is, this idea of goods and ideas moving around. When we talk about movement, there's really two kinds of movement. And I'm going to start off with some arrows here. Once again, I always use my green for my transition. Don't be perfect. You can always go back and color it later on if you can't keep up. Or stop the video. That works too. We're going to talk about something called voluntary movement versus involuntary. And just like movement, these are specific kinds of movement. And I'm going to give them a kapow box too because, well, gee willikers, I'm going to give them a definition, so I might as well give them a kapow box. And I don't have to get too crazy with my yellow. Just enough to make us pop off that page. Some of you want to fill these in later on, but don't lose your mind. Just give yourself a little yellow on there. And we talk about voluntary movement. We're talking you choose to go. And involuntary is different because generally you are forced to go. Now, let's put this in perspective. Say you do something wrong, the cops pick you up. Well, maybe you want to go to jail because you don't have a place to live. You're looking for some food. Man, this is a good place. I can hang out, meet some new friends. Sure, voluntarily, you choose to go. Most people don't. Involuntarily, they have to tase you, handcuff you, throw you in the back of the cop car, and take you screaming and yelling. That's when you're being forced to be go to jail. It's the same thing if you pick up and you move from Louisiana because you want to come to Iowa for a better job to make more money. You chose to take that job. But maybe you're in Louisiana and a hurricane hits and your home gets destroyed, and now you're forced to leave Louisiana and you have to come someplace else, and Iowa's where you end up. And we've had that exact scenario with Hurricane Gustav and Katrina. We had a lot of refugees that came to Iowa and they never left. We've got people in our community, people in our school who are the product of movement. They came here for different places. Some came here for opportunity. Some came here because they had to escape something that was really bad in their home. That's voluntary versus involuntary. Okay, so here's the bigger question. What drives voluntary, and that's a terrible looking arrow, by the way. What drives voluntary versus involuntary? And the term is probably really simple. You've probably heard it before, but we're going to talk about push and we're going to talk about pull. Now, keep in mind, these can kind of go either direction. I mean, sometimes you're pulled someplace, but you leave someplace involuntarily. It just you choose this place to go because it was a better place to go. I don't want to get too crazy with that, but let's talk about what drives these things, okay? I call them drivers. And specifically, we're talking about pull factors and we're talking about push factors. Pull factors are reasons that would pull you into it. If you go by Jimmy John's, you smell the really good bread. It says free smells. That smells so good. Okay, you go in there, next thing you know, you're buying a turkey tom. That's a pull factor. A push factor would be some guy standing by the doorway, with a baseball bat and telling you he's going to knock you out if you don't walk in the door. That's a push factor. Both obviously drive a lot of movement, but pull factors would be things like new opportunities. Sometimes students will open enroll to a new school because they have more sports opportunities like bowling or swimming. Small schools don't offer those things because they don't have the facilities or the coaching staff for it. Maybe a pull factor. I've got some people in my town who started a new church, and I've got people moving to the Collins area because they want to be closer to their church. So religion sometimes is a pull. It drives people in. Money. And this ties really good into opportunities. Maybe you have a chance to make more money. Medicine. I've got friends who've had to go out of state for special treatments for cancer and things like that. Well, they chose to go, and that could be a push factor too. But they chose to go to a specific facility up in Minnesota because they're the best in the country. So that good reputation of better medicine was the reason they went that place. But maybe they were pushed out of Iowa because we didn't have the right facilities. They were pulled to Minnesota because they had the best doctors for what he had. Education. Education's a really good one. Some people move to certain communities just because the school system. You might move to a new neighborhood because you heard it's a really safe neighborhood. Maybe you move to a new town because you love the culture and you like the food and stuff. If you want really good food, maybe you go to a certain town as opposed to a different town because they don't have any restaurants or they don't like the kind of food you like to eat. Um, and weather. A lot of folks retire down south because they don't like the snow. And if you're old, it's really hard getting out in the snow. So there's lots of pull factors. Maybe you move to Florida because of better weather. Maybe you come to Iowa because you've got a chance for a higher paying job. Maybe you're going to make more money if you go someplace. These things all pull us from one place to the other. And that's different than a push factor because push factors are usually a little more negative. For instance, hunger. We could also call that famine. A lot of people in the 1800s came here from Ireland because they had a huge famine there, and people were starving, so they came to the United States for a chance to for just a better life. War. We have folks who are coming here from the Ukraine or from Southeast Asia because they're trying to avoid violence and war and things like that. We have people who come here because they want to avoid crime. Or maybe you're in a neighborhood that's not so good anymore and you just want to get to an area where people don't mess with you as much. You don't have to leave the country to avoid these things, but sometimes you do. Maybe the climate. Just like Florida pulls you down there because of the weather, maybe the weather pushes you out of Iowa because you can't handle the winters. The pull is what pulls you to the specific place you're going. The push is what forces you out of the place that you're currently staying in. And maybe you've just had some sort of trauma. Maybe you need a fresh start. Um, you grew up in a house that, you had some bad things happen there and you just want to leave the area and start fresh and find new friends and whatever. Hey, that happens sometimes. The bottom line is all these things that we've talked about, you can probably brainstorm and come up with more ideas. But the big picture is I'm just trying to get you to understand, hey, we move for various reasons. Sometimes we want to, and sometimes we don't to. And the reasons why we move, there are certain drivers that get us going certain directions. These are pull factors or push factors, things that pull us to a certain place and things that push us away and force us to leave. And, well, a lot of you can probably connect with a lot of this because some of you may have ended up where you're at because of some of the things in this paper. Either way, this is our page. Quick look if you want to take a freeze frame of it. Other than that, good job. Thank you for writing down these notes and be ready to use them later on. Good job.